Good morning and welcome to the Killik & Co market update. COVID cases are on the rise again as we move towards winter, particularly across some areas of Europe. Germany, for example, has introduced new restrictions for the unvaccinated, and this morning Austria announced it would be moving into another full national lockdown starting from Monday and lasting for at least 10 days. While further lockdowns will be bad news for some sectors, for example hospitality and travel, they should potentially be good news for the companies that previously benefited from other lockdowns, for example working from home software companies and digital payments companies. Further restrictions will also force governments and central banks to support the economy and therefore the market by facilitating more lenient conditions for consumers and businesses, for example by keeping interest rates lower for longer. On the subject of climate change, we are seeing more and more incidences of severe weather. Here in the UK, it's been a particularly warm autumn, and globally 2021 is set to be one of the 7 hottest years on records. This year, global sea levels have reached new record levels. We've seen wildfires across Greece and the US, and we've seen severe floods across Nepal, India and China. This week, India has announced that it will be closing all of the schools and colleges in Delhi because the pollution has become so bad. Pollution tends to be quite bad in India at this time of year for a number of reasons. One is that farmers tend to burn off excess crops. One is the high level of fireworks that are set off due to the Festival of Lights. But fossil fuels are certainly a major factor, and that's why it was quite disappointing that India would not commit to more at the Climate Change Summit in Glasgow. India will not be reducing its use of coal in the short term, and it does not expect to be carbon neutral before the year 2070. Here's a chart showing the carbon emissions for the US, China and India since the year 2050. You can see that emissions for the US have declined over the last few years as the country has moved away from use of coal. However, the trend for China and India is very much upwards, and this really makes the case for investing more in renewable power on a global scale. New vehicle registrations across the EU have dropped by 30% in October in comparison to October of the previous year. Here's a chart showing the longer term trend. As you can see, 2020 wasn't a great year either, the main reason being that lots of car showrooms were closed due to lockdown. This year the issue is more on the supply side, with manufacturers struggling to make enough vehicles because of the global semiconductor shortage, and lots of dealerships now have waiting lists of up to 8 months for new vehicles. This global semiconductor or chip shortage has been caused by a number of issues, one being the trade restrictions between the US and China, which have disrupted global supply chains. Another is the fact that lots of factories were closed during lockdown, and that's led to a big backlog. But there's also been a big increase in demand, partly due to the introduction of 5G and partly due to the fact that newer vehicles, particularly electric ones, have lots more functionality and therefore they require a lot more chips. Some companies, for example German manufacturer Infineon, have been benefiting from this big increase in demand. Infineon, for example, makes about 40% of its revenue from supplying chips to the automotive sector. As you can see by the chart, the company has had a very strong run over the last few months. So please do give us a call if you would like to hear about this company in more detail. Moving on to have a look at next week, it's very quiet on the calendar and we have not got any companies on the Killik & Co covered list reporting. So that leaves me to wish you a very happy weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next Friday.